Very shocking. Kwesi Pratt Jr. were reacted to issues, especially around Kwadwo Kyerematen, how Ray esi free MPP amanyukuo ni mu, any the political party wako joining. This is the first time Kwesi Pratt Jr. reacted before say, and also reacted after Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen forming in the UP. In fact, we're coming out with facts, with classical examples on the old UP tradition, and our linking to the new UP plus. Abusia, you can't afford to miss this episode. Metro so benya abotre na watena se na wati nsemi wahwe akwakusi na wonya sebi emu asempɔ nankasa na yekoba yebeto aso edi ama Metro so be like na wahye no do adwenkyere atombrakom conversation ekoso yakopon enko bibia ho Alhaji and Alhaji show yinti nsenibi.
Well, I think it is important to appreciate that a huge seismic shift has occurred in Ghanaian politics. And it doesn't matter how big the United Party becomes. It doesn't matter whether the United Party wins elections or not. A huge seismic shift has occurred in Ghanaian politics. You see, if you want to understand what has happened, you need to go back to 1951 and look at elections in Ghana from 1951 up to 2024. And if you do that analysis, it will tell you the magnitude of what has happened. First, the first most important consideration is that the Dankwa Buzia Dombo tradition, the very first time it won elections which could be described as free and fair throughout our history was in the year 2000. And the records are clear. It won elections in 1969. But to do that, they had to ban the Convention People's Party. Not just that. To do that, they had to criminalize Nkrumah and everything that resembled Nkrumah or sounded like Nkrumah to win elections in 1969. Now, from 1969, the only election they won, which appeared to be free and fair, even though there were problems, was the 2000 elections. You understand? Now, to win the 2000 elections, mind you, you have to appreciate the fact that President Kufuor went out of his way to create a coalition of forces, different forces, to be able to win the 2000 elections. As a matter of fact, he built or contributed to building the Great Alliance, which is an alliance of Nkrumahs and Dankwa Buzia traditionalists and so on, to be able to win the 2000 elections. Okay. Now, later on, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo also won elections. But the point is that you need to look at the history of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, by 1966, was a card-bearing member of the Convention People's Party. Indeed, he was more than a card-bearing member of the Convention People's Party. He belonged to the most radical left wing of the Convention People's Party. So it was that when he was contesting elections, many people on the left of Ghanaian politics saw him as one of them. You understand? He was not seen as a typical Dankwa Busia Dombo candidate. He was seen as a candidate in the middle, a candidate who was going to bring together different forces and so on. And this is a fact. Now, unfortunately, after winning elections, he then went on a bench deliberately to discredit Nkrumah, to promote his uncles who played a role in Ghanaian history and so on. What was the result? What was the result? The result was the devastating defeat that the New Patriotic Party endured in the 2024 elections. Now, clearly, those who have studied Ghanaian politics have said that in Ghanaian elections, at least from 1992, it has become very clear that there's no political party or tradition which can win elections on its own strength. This is a very important statement. That they cannot, even if they put all of their strength together, 100%, they cannot win elections. And that they need to build alliances and so on. Now, it's important to note that even the National Democratic Congress, you can demonstrate clearly that the times when it has won elections, it has won elections because it created the impression of a coalition of forces. Look, in 1992, Rawlings, with all that he represented and so on for the NDC, had to bring in Nkensei Aka as his running mate, as a deliberate tactic to win elections. You remember? Now, in addition to that, they went into an alliance with all kinds of parties which were known to be non-NDC in order to win that election and so on. And subsequently, what happened? In choosing Professor Mills, to be a vice presidential candidate, his credentials also as an Nkrumahist became extremely important in that choice and so on. And I can go on and demonstrate, why, no political party in Ghana can win elections on its own strength, even if it's able to mobilize its strength 100%. And see, this is the reason why the choice of Matthew Poku Prempeh as running mate in the last election was hugely problematic for the New Patriotic Party. This is why when he made statements like, and you're in Nkrumah and so on, and went on a bench, a misguided bench, to fight Nkrumah, who was not contesting in that election, because there was no strong Nkrumahist party contesting elections at the time. Eventually, the results of the elections clearly showed how reckless he had been in his campaign and so on. So that point is clear. So if you accept these facts or these analysis, then the exit of any part, any section of a political party, especially from the Dankwa Busia tradition, from the NDC tradition, has monumental consequences for that party. Again, you can go back to 2000 and examine the emergence of the National Reform Party. It didn't win elections. But what did it do? It damaged the NDC substantially and also contributed to the victory of President John Ajikun Kufuor. You understand? So that analysis is clear. And it's clear to the extent that any hemorrhaging from any of the two so-called big parties has monumental consequences. That's one. Now, why is this a major seismic shift? That's another reason. And the other reason is that the New Patriotic Party is a party which is struggling, and it has been struggling for some time, to create a united platform. It has gone to the extent of announcing an amnesty for all those who have left the party, who are angry with the party. They should come back. It is appealing to the Polafocos, the Nyahoja Macros, and all of them to come back. Why? Because it recognizes that it has a serious problem, that there's a dent in its very center. Now, why the party is engaged in this effort of extending olive branches and so on, bam! This shift has occurred. What does it say about the success of the attempt to bring everybody back home? Only one thing, that attempt has failed. Now, if that attempt has failed, what are the consequences of that failure? That's clear, you understand? What are the consequences of that failure to reunite the Dankwa Buzia Dombo platform? Now, it is not just also a very simple question of a failure of the attempt to rebuild the Dankwa Buzia Dombo platform. It is not just that. It's not just about the failure. It's about the weight of the failure. And if you're going to look at the weight of the failure, it becomes important to look at the stature of Alan Kojo Kyerematen. I've been around for some time. I've participated in shaping many developments in all the political parties. You understand? And so on. And Senna, I can tell you quite honestly that Alan Kojo Kyerematen is not just somebody who aspires to lead the New Patriotic Party. He's one of the very few people who built it from scratch. And I say this in all honesty. Why? The attempt to build the New Patriotic Party, the contributions that he made from the young executive forum as a businessman and so on. I mean, the contributions which he made, I mean, that story will be told at a later date. But he was most instrumental in the formation of this party. There were a few of them, but he was one of them. People like Mr. Kwame Pianim played extraordinary roles in building that new party. People like Darocha and so on. Now, if you just go into the history of how the New Patriotic Party became the first political party from 1992 to acquire its headquarters, and you look at the role that Alan Kojo Kyerematen played and so on, it should be clear to you who he was in that party and how he symbolizes more than what some are able to admit publicly. So this is a huge pillar. Now, you also have to weigh in the fact that by 2008, when President Kufuor was leaving office, there appeared to have been some understanding within that party that in terms of the hierarchy, he was next to President Kufuor. And nobody is going to doubt that. You understand? It appeared within the party, within the structures and so on, that he was a natural inheritor of the legacy of President Kufuor. Of course, it did not manifest and so on. Indeed, at some point when he had to exit the presidential campaign, he made a statement to the effect that he did not want to break the party. You understand? That he did not want to be the reason why the party was going to go through hiccups and so on, and therefore he decided not to contest the second round and allowed President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to be elected as the candidate. Now, nobody knows what would have happened if he had actually contested for a second round and the consequences that the party could have suffered and so on. But he was magnanimous enough. He looked at the future of the party. He didn't want to destroy the party he had contributed to building and so on, and therefore decided that, look, he was not going to contest the second round, and bowed out gracefully. This is the man. This is the man who is at the center of the formation of the United Party. And I think it is important to pay attention to these facts and to this analysis. Now, Senator, there's something else. The choice of name, I guess, was so deliberately done. Because look, many people simply refer to the New Patriotic Party as the UP. They talk about the UP tradition and so on. So UP, United Party, is akin to New Patriotic Party and so on. So this name was so deliberately chosen, so it doesn't sound new, it doesn't sound like something, which has been crafted newly and so on. It is at the heart of the history of the New Patriotic Party. It's at the very center of the history of the New Patriotic Party and so on. So carefully chosen. But you see, in addition to so carefully choosing the name UP, they've done something else. Now, if you listen to all of their communications, they're talking about UP plus. So they have stepped into this tradition. They're trying to own the tradition, but they're saying that it is not just the tradition, there's something more. What is that plus? They're saying that we represent the best values, the best traditions of the UP. But there's a plus. What is that plus? And I've been listening to their communicators, and they're doing an excellent job of that. They're saying that we are not overly partisan, and that we want to be pragmatic. We want to stand in the middle. Okay? Indeed, what they're claiming, without saying it, is that they are social democratic and not extreme right wing. Listen to them very carefully. What is social democracy? Social democracy is an opportunistic political concept, which enables you to run with the capitalists, and when the capitalists, you can turn any way around and so on. You understand? And exactly that is what they're saying. That's what they're saying. I mean, they're saying that, look, we are not steeped in this Dankwa Busia ideology. And they actually go to the extent of making the point that if the government does something which is commendable, we will commend the government. If they do something that we think is against our principle and will not inure to the benefit of the Ghanaian people, we will criticize them, we would even fight them. That's positioning. Understand? That is significant positioning, and we should not lose sight of that. So they are positioning themselves in such a way as to become attractive beyond the Dankwa Busia tradition. They are positioning themselves in a way which would enable them possibly to emerge as a significant third force in Ghanaian politics. And that's also most significant. You understand? Most significant. Now, I'm looking at developments before, development on Thursday, and developments now, and so on. I'm saying to myself that if you look at the contest for leadership, flag bearership within the New Patriotic Party, it is obvious that there are cracks. There's a serious effort to paper over the cracks, but you just have to open your eyes and the cracks become obvious. Okay? For example, there is Kwabna Ejei Ejapon, who is one of the 5 flag bearers, but who has publicly complained about the monetization of the process of electing a flag bearer. He was reluctant to pay the 4-point-something million development fee and so on. He thought that it was an aberration and so on. Okay? That crack is obvious. You just have to open your eyes and you see that crack. Beyond that, there are some of the contestants who have publicly stated that this election in January next year, is a huge departure from party tradition and from any democratic ethos and so on. And that the election should have started from the bottom to the top and not from the top to the bottom and so on. That crack is obvious. You only have to open your eyes to see it. You understand? But there's even a more serious crack. What is that more serious crack? You see, when all the candidates went to file their nominations, only one candidate's process was captured on the official communications platform of the party. And this became a major issue. You're saying that, look, the party is biased in favor of only one candidate and so on. Now listen to the explanation that the party gave. The party cancelled and says that, oh, we are sorry that it happened. Unfortunately, the person who is managing our communications platform is not a party member. It's an outsider, that we have contracted to do this. Whoa! Master, can you believe this? New Patriotic Party. Its major communications platform is not managed by the party. It's not managed by a party member. Some individual from somewhere and so on. That's the explanation. Now the explanation itself is problematic. But beyond the explanation being problematic, if the party allows a situation where this open bias in favor of one candidate is allowed to happen, my goodness, there's a problem. There's a huge problem. Okay. Now, there are those who are predicting that if this perception of bias is confirmed in the election of the flag bearer, there will be major fallouts from the party. That some people will leave the party. I'm not a soothsayer. I cannot join the soothsayers on this. But just in case it happens, what the United Party has done is to position itself as the political receptacle which will be receiving these fallouts. That's important in the analysis. That's extremely important in the analysis. Okay. Then the other thing for me which is very important in this analysis is this debate about core values. What are the core values of the NPP? Are the core values being upheld or not? Who best represents the core values of the UP tradition and so on? That debate itself is very, very harmful to the New Patriotic Party. Forget whoever wins that debate. The fact that today, amongst right-wing politicians, right-wing traditionalists and so on, there's a debate about core values and who best represents those core values and so on is not healthy for the New Patriotic Party. So whatever happens, the New Patriotic Party is limping. But Massa, there is more. You understand? There is more. This is not the only development. We have been told by some prominent members of the New Patriotic Party that they also intend to form another political party from the New Patriotic Party. You know, Dr. Mwaku and co. Okay? And it does appear that they also are engaged in feverish preparations for the launching of a new patriotic party, launching of a party which to all intents and purposes will be a break away from the New Patriotic Party. My goodness, if that happens, what again? What again? Now, this is a party which is already limping. This is a party which is in huge distress. If this happens, whoa, my God, it's going to take an awful lot of time and effort to heal the wounds, to reconstruct, and even to begin to position itself as a credible, viable political party. I am tempted, and I'm truly tempted to say that the singing of the Requiem Mass has begun for the New Patriotic Party. But I'll restrain myself. You understand? I'm tempted to say that the singing of the Requiem Mass has begun. But I'll restrain myself. For a number of reasons. The first reason is that in any analysis, you ought to take account of what is referred to as the imponderables. And there are many imponderables, you know, in this analysis. And for that reason, I will restrain myself. I would also restrain myself because we are dealing with human institutions. And the most distinguishing thing about human institutions is that they can change due to some stimulus that we can always not discern. Okay? And if there are stimulus that we can always not discern, and I cannot discern, then I'm not going to be making statements like this is the Requiem Mass and so on. Because for all you know, it may not be a Requiem Mass, but maybe it can be at some future date the singing of the Hallelujah chorus. Okay? So I restrain myself. But the signs are not looking good. The signs are looking terrible for the New Patriotic Party. And the earlier they walk up to that realization, the better it will be for them. I wish the better. And you know why I wish the better? I wish the better because we have adopted for ourselves multi-party rule, whatever it means. And indeed, there are indications, if you've been watching Ghanaian politics from 1992 to the present, the multi-party rule itself can be most decadent. Okay? But that's what we have elected for ourselves. A multi-party rule can only survive, can only be enriched if the strength of the competing parties is improved. So I don't wish a situation where there's only one strong political party in Ghana. There ought to be many political parties with sufficient strength to challenge themselves and to create a certain balance. I wish the New Patriotic Party well.
Thank you very much for concluding the debate on the UP, United Party. They were outdoored just last Thursday. But you know the lead faces, and one of the interesting things about what Lawyer and Solo did, in fact, that on this platform we struggled for a while to get the MPP people onto the platform, and we discovered Solo. Every time he'll be here, he said he doesn't mind whoever you bring, he will come. Then he brought Lawyer in. They enriched the debate. So in the matter of political communication, they have made a huge impact in places.
It's a superstar of political communications. Yeah. I mean, every radio station is looking for Solomon, every TV station is looking for Solomon, and you should just see the number of posts, social media posts, after he goes on any program, and the number of views he's attracting, and so on. Now, I've been having conversations with him. The last time I spoke with him, he said, but it is Pan-African television which created this, and so on. Maybe it's true. I salute his honesty and his recognition of what Alhaji and Pan-African television have contributed to making him what he has become. Of course, if there's bad material, no matter what contribution you make, it will not gel. So he must have had something going for him already. You understand? So, and Lawyer has become such an important commentator too. I mean, Lawyer Apia Danko has become such an important communicator, you know, today in Ghana. The two of them have become a formidable pair. And that is one of the factors that people who are examining the UP and its emergence have to take into account. It appears to have very formidable communicators who have gained a lot of respect, like Philip London, and so on, you know.
Well, thank you. Let me do just a couple of comments, then we turn to our very next topic. Yusuf Mohammed says the UP appear more scary to the MPP than Movement for Change. The MPP do not deserve to be in the circle of the largest political parties we have because it's a threat to, he said, Ghana's growth and our democracy must be resolved by any means possible. That's Yusuf Mohammed who sent that comment. Magdo says Akufo-Addo has been the most ingenious politician I have ever seen in the Fourth Republic. Akufo-Addo succeeded in killing the ambition of Mr. Alan Shomanting, and never again should anyone from the stock of Akufo-Addo lead the MPP. What was the contribution of Akufo-Addo in the formation of the MPP? So I can tell you that after their presidential primaries, another party will be formed again from the MPP. Magdo sent that from Alajo. There's Charles Thompson who says Kwesi Pratt is an erudite of the highest order. Make no mistake about that. There is Jonas JC who says, in fact, I don't know the thinking behind choosing the name UP by Alan, because we all know, or some of us know, that Osie murder and the trouble the UP tradition has taken this beautiful country of ours into, especially Kwame Nkrumah. Alan should have known better and maintained the butterfly rather than the UP. He has diminished his credibility. And that is the end of Alan's political career. There's more comments on it. There's Kwesi Akwa from the UK who says NDC, MPP, and UP or any political party formed is okay. Politics in Ghana is pure business, simple. However, our country, Ghana, should develop with all the great minds and ideas that Ghana is looking for. Political parties are to create harmony and build a nation for the people. It is time we begin to think about the role of the state in forming political parties in Ghana. Ghana needs political party reforms now. There's Tafa in Amrahia who also says, good morning, Senna. When the people said Nanado's government was not fighting Galamsey, they were right. And I can assure you that Nanado government knew what exactly was happening with regards to the destruction of our rivers and vegetations. Thank you very much for that comment. Okay, Prince Henry Kofoidwa, who says the formation of the UP by Alan is not and will not be a problem for the NDC, rather to the MPP. UP will even become the second force if the MPP fails to elect Kennedy Japan come January 2026, because I foresee Ken breaking away if he doesn't win the flag bearer race next year, January. As for Madam, the law is the law. Okay, she says she's fighting an unnecessary battle because there's somebody from the Canadian Japan campaign team here. Anyway, we have to move on to the statement that was made by the president that has raised two questions. Was he talking about his own succession? And if he is not, the suggestion is made when? It's about him saying we would have a female president soon. That makes a lot of sense. We have a female vice president. So it's just one step more. We get to a female president. In fact, when the president is not in the country, she acts. So we have had a female acting as president. Well, let's start that discussion. Once again, I have to start with the Dr. Macaulay Vakevo on this one. Doc?
Whether the president was referring to his successor or not, whether I've said it, whether Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman shows herself up to contest for NPP flag bearer or not. She has a place in NDC. She has a place in history, and nobody can take it away from her. She's breaking a number of ceilings. First female vice chancellor in Ghana, first female running mate on the ticket of any of these big parties that we've been referring to, and subsequently first female vice president of the Republic of Ghana. So that is history enough, whether she decides to contest NDC primaries or not. That is history enough. She has her place in there. So I think that the president was not talking really about timing, but rather direction, a matter of trajectory. You must understand the context of which His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was speaking. He had attended a women's gathering in Beijing, and he attempted to paint our journey as a people as far as women empowerment and women amplification is concerned. So naturally, if Ghana has been able to produce a vice president in our recent history, it was only natural that very soon we will produce a woman president. It's not far from history once we have been able to hit here. But we should understand that in terms of our journey, we have had some women who have played a role in our political history. If you start from the likes of Hannah Kujo, if you read history, pre-independence and immediately post-independence, through to even the Rawlings era, the role of Her Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings in trying to institutionalize women's role in our politics, in our body politics. At every corner of this country, we had a 31st December women's representative, 31st December women group. And in fact, when we formed the NDC, most of these 31st December women's women had, benefited from such experience and naturally migrated to become branch women organizers, constituency women organizers. In fact, many of our pioneering women as a political party were members of this 31st December women's movement. So we have done well as a country. And if you look at the Fourth Republic itself, in terms of women representation in Parliament, we have had a Speaker of Parliament who is a woman. We've had that before. We have had a Chief Justice who is also a woman, from Georgina Wood, and then recently to CJ Tokunu. So we are doing well as a people. And then we've had the Chief of Staff who was also a woman recently. Now the real challenge is where there's competition, in terms of where there's where you have to appoint, where you have to select people through appointment and all that. We are able to do well there. But where the women have to go the steep slope and compete for the positions, that is where we have a challenge as a people. So if you look at Parliament, for example, we are doing less than 15% of women in Parliament, because our Parliament is strictly elective. People must go through rigorous primaries, win in their political parties, and then compete in the general elections. So we are doing just below 15%, below the AU benchmark of 30% of women in our legislature. So where we have to elect the women, we are not doing very well. The women, some of them have attempted elections. In the past, it was only men on our ballot paper until I think in 2020, where we had about 3 women on it, but they lost. Nana Kwadajman Rollins, Kwiadonko, Bridget, PPP candidates. Despite the fact that they lost, for me, it was to also indicate that yes, it is not just a men's job. Women can also play that role. Then, His Excellency John Dramani Maham's bold decision to amplify a woman, and not just because he wanted, or because Professor Nana Jane was a woman. The caliber of Prof, an accomplished woman, but it took His Excellency John Dramani Mahama to take that bold decision, because we are in a society where our views, our perception about women in leadership, we were not really matured to a certain stage. So it was a risk that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was taking. I remember during those times, there were a number of people who had done research, both internally, externally, who were pointing to the fact that Ghanaians were not ready to vote for a woman, whether as a running mate or whether on their own as candidates. So it was a big risk that His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was taking at that time. But he had his own beliefs and faith in what Professor J. Nana was bringing on board as a ticket. And today we have it in history that she is the vice president. So for me, the president's call that soon we will have a female president is also a call on the political parties, which is largely the vehicles through which we have these candidates, to do some work internally to create the environment to produce such history that we are looking up to, because like I said, if the real game is down there, where you need to campaign, in a system which is highly dominated by men. If you look at our electoral college, for example, for every branch, we have just 1 out of 9 of the delegates being women. So if you aggregate everything, you have less than 12% of women in the whole electoral college. So right from start, any woman who tries to contest is starting from some 50 meters behind the starting line. And that is one barrier that as political parties we must look at. So if we would need to amplify women, we need to bring women to the forefront through elective processes. Then we must also put some reforms within our party structures. And it is similar to the MPP. If you look at the MPP, they have 5 executives at the polling station level, and mostly it is one that is a woman, the polling station woman organizer. You understand that? So it is difficult for women to win elective positions in our body politics than the men. Again, you have financiers who are men, so clearly the gatekeepers, those who really condition the system that produces these candidates, everything is dominated by men, and we need to look at that structures very well. So yes, soon can be tomorrow, but the real barriers against women leading is real, especially for elective position. But it is not just in Ghana. If you look at Africa, how many women have gone through the process, won elections? Maybe Liberia, Salif Johnson. Apart from her, most of the others, they become leaders by accident. Maybe they were vice, a president is gone, and then they take over. Some of them go ahead to contest main elections and lose. So there are real barriers, and I'm sure over time we'll overcome them. And when we get there, and we have a woman presenting herself on the ticket of one of these big political parties that we have in Ghana, then we know that we are really getting close to that dream. So the president's speech was aspirational. I'm not sure it was just about just this particular what is ahead of the NDC.
Yes, so that is it. Intuitie Opani Alan Kwejo Chiramantin the Pertia Watia ene Obibie ka ho asem ankofo esusu se Pertina Watie no eye the end of MPP in the election. Utie nsema Kwesi Pratt Jr. eka na say our point onimdi oka. He knows very well. Kwesi Pratt Obia is one of the few people they know history, and history knows them very well. Otanasi say Omao a history about Ghana's democracy. It is very interesting, and sometimes ayana ye perceive ni some beka. Sometimes we wish we can hear all what happened before say Ghana yibinya ye democracy we enye easy, but open baby and as open nipo betimi actually the root of it. Your uncle Kwesi Pratt Jr. a expert. Obi obeka say MPP amanyuku no wouldn't be affected by new created United Party. No? That person, he doesn't know politics. That person onim history, and when we come to strategies, in fact, onipa calling him, yenim say the now then movement for change now United Party was derived from New Patriotic Party in Quebec. UP is a subset of MPP. UP is a subset from what MPT can mathematically MPP mother what do you call it is the universal set. Yes, that is the mother set, is the universal set, and UP is a subset. You get me right? Anytime be BB, every BB in the Akuba BB sote automatically BB sote, and it is real. I idea this year idea 10 now Obibana say 10 no am I am no longer keeping mine in the part of the 10. So I am going to take mine from it. But independent in Saturn, one who do ye. The moment the person digged he or her hands and I say, or then in Saturn, you couldn't quantify, you couldn't identify how many or how much the person took from the bowl. All of a sudden, the Nipan watino ojine baby and claims on so a wonko for. How would you know their strategy? Such a person also no baby beer. He has joined you before on what must on what incomo, and he knows your what weaknesses and what strong points. Onim womre yim onim sabi chese twi no kra hwan ye dem me ne. What you say? It is any pan ye na adwen se ono wo kwa kansi ya. Although say untimi mbitiw because of say ono na okoyi ni ho firi mu ntini still na powers no wor home but wo you di akogina nkyai but obe frustrate you. I was minim say muti na make na sia wa want ya say fache me but na me pese me chen say MPP as a political party said the Kwesi Pratt person change na say omo they are doomed. Either UP is going to win election, neither they are not. MPP as a political party is doomed because anytime you go election, people what the UP plus people from the UP plus they could have voted for MP, but because of the UP plus, they are not going to vote for what MPP. Therefore, they will vote for United Party. You get me right? So sometimes, Ayana, maybe some of the MPP forward, they did a very big mistake to allow Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen to leave the party. It was a huge and a deliberate mistake on Muyeye because the arrogance of them weren't allowed them. And na Omoye obeko nko onokra ka ho anya dodo o join anya. And Alan also heard all this rumor. He heard all this noise. He heard all these talkatives. So he decided to what? Switch. And then was switch. And when you could draw two enyan taban. Afafanto enyan taban abeye sebi afafanto panyin ai ne UP. Enti Kwesi Pratt so say MPP mo wo kwantwa. And you need to work on that, else you are doomed. Abuzia, enti enkomotinti a Kwesi Pratt di na no, eno no, ena ma to me boasa chechi e de acho. Ma me agima Kwesi Rollins, yakopon fa de kra NCA. Ma me no waye bi pa e de ama Ghana. And 31st movement of December, and we have 31st December movement. You see, me, mami, let me be frank with you. So I guess mami wan kaminyanti di daw. But do you know something? Ghana on I deal with boy because the hypocrisy of how people pastor they make comment na it is serious. So obi usisia na ebe kan ho asem obi usisia na ebe nya na ho asem aka ba nipa na ti asem we couldn't raise all those matters and I say all those issues. Say issue say manipulation so na ya nye den ya money panabaso, but we will wait till the person passes away. The pan will be in a chest and day. Obeda kote, the bushing for the year day, or mood diarrhea, or mood diao, the ma a diarrhea, or him, the bermina, a zenato, a yura, a branch. You see, they are all mourning. How can they take all these appellations and praises? Ubitias yamon candia way, the munja hypocrite, Mami tia se muni nkan se movement yo ti eboa Ghana pa but man kan da not even se ni kunu no se bi owuye in 2020 man kan da the moment any mami ene a few days ago atwan nanu mo nse biana but as the mami ya de o Ghana politics mami he was one of the first ladies yenye bi da o Ghana eni nsem kika bebre ten na Ghana for mo yesa. To stay in Africa, dear Charlie, it is not easy. It is a full course to stay in Africa, especially Ghana. It is a full course you need to study. And yes, I did be a bit faded. So why do you conversation? I know if you're not authentic platform negative, then coupon coswa and can now we should have known to two animal and fancy. Then now here you call me on your website there and for a mount. Would you to my me na like it, na subscribe to the channel? No, now I feel me at your own person subscribe again how. Odokwa so subscribe wate na beka busua na ho na yintimi enyini embom. Nyankopon hyira makraw. Bye bye.